This is a workshop about
Hey,
how to
this is
read
Nat.
comics. So first, I'll introduce myself, and then I'll get into it. So, I'm a junior at Berklee College of Music. I'm currently going to graduate in 2021 with a music business entrepreneurship degree. I'm also writing a comic book called The Amazing Bug and Plant Girl, which will be released sometime next month. Besides loving comic book, more likely than not be a comic book store or a comic book charity. And I also want to thank Juliana Williams before we begin, just because she helped me out with manga related stuff because it's not my area of specialty. So I'm going to share my screen with the presentation. Just click present. So, how to start reading comics. First, let's talk about what can make it hard to start reading comics, especially Marvel and DC. Number one, complex canon and reliance on having read previous issues. Number two, stigma that you have to be a quote unquote expert to walk into a comic book store. And three, a lot of the marketing towards Marvel and DC is geared towards seasoned book readers rather than new readers. So, how do new readers combat these? Number one, you have to accept that you're not going to know everything and read stuff that is interesting to you without worried about reading every comic book in order. Number two, most people in comic book stores are actually happy to help beginners. So this is just anecdotally, but in my experience, there's not really a stigma that exists in comic book stores. Number three, the marketing doesn't help you, but it doesn't hurt you either. So you have the ability to do research on your own, which this is going to cover this presentation. So step one in terms of reading comics, identify a comic book movie, TV show, or character that you like. This can include franchises that aren't originally a comic book, such as Star Wars or Nancy Drew. Both of those and other franchises like it have comic books series, and you also obviously Japanese anime. So we're going to go through some examples with some hypothetical characters wanting to read comic books. So Alice wants an introduction to Batman and likes the Dark Knight movie. And Tommy wants something that was adapted for his TV show, Daredevil season 3. So step two, determine which kind of comics you want to read. Do you want to read about their origin story, a story that is adapted for a movie and TV show, or an introduction to the character? So I said earlier, Alice wants to be introduced to Batman, and Tommy wants the story that was adapted for Daredevil season 3. So here's some manga terminology, just in terms of I guess they're kind of like genres. So I hope I'm pronouncing these correctly. Seinen, which is men's manga, josei, which is women's manga, shoujo, which is teenage girl manga, shonen, which is teenage boy manga, and kodomo, which is children's manga. So step three, research which comic that is actually going to be based on the parameters you set. So I have a few. I'll share the link to this presentation after, so you guys can look through it and click on these links. Uh, sorry. So first, for Marvel and DC with origin stories, there's a good website called Comic Book Herald, and there's a YouTuber called Comic Drake. Both of those gives you one of them is an article, one of them is videos about where to start with characters and their origin stories. For if you want to find out which comics were adapted for storylines in movies and TV shows, I'm blanking on the guy's name. Tommy wants. There's a good YouTuber called Emergency Awesome. And if you search for trailer breakdowns, that's usually when he talks about which comics there are. So here are a few articles about how to research manga, kind of outlining the genres, like I mentioned before, and also just what are good books to start with. And then I included here. I'm not going to talk a ton about indie comics here, but I did link some good articles. There's Webtoons as well. Webtoons is a like an open platform where people can post their comic books. So with Alice, how is Alice going to go about researching this? So there's an article on um, Comic Book Herald. This is just came from when I searched uh, Batman where to start. So I went with the bolded one, Batman Year One, Comic Book Herald. This is just so that's going to be Alice's comic book, and it also just happens to be one of the inspirations for the Dark Knight. So you get that added bonus because Alice likes the Dark Knight movie. So with Tommy's going to go about it a little differently. He's going to figure out which comic book was adapted for Daredevil season 3. And the way he does this is by going to Emergency Awesome's page and watching a video about Daredevil season 3 trailer, where he talks about how the story they're adapting is called Daredevil Born Again from comics. So, step 4. Now that you've decided which comic book you want to read, you need to locate it. So, the two options are physical or digital. So, first, I'll talk about physical comics. So, this is probably like the most common and obvious way to get physical comic book stores. So the best way to find your local comic book store is through that link, comicshoplocator.com. You type in your zip code. I think it works internationally. Or you can search for a comic book store near me or vintage stores near me. The downsides of comic book stores due to COVID-19, many comic book stores have closed, although some stores are offering curbside pickup and delivery. So you should look on that store's website that's near you to figure out what their situation is. I know with my hometown comic book store, they were doing curbside pickup. So I was able to go outside the store and then get something that I paid for on Venmo, and then just take it home, even though I couldn't go. So next, ordering physical comics online. Amazon is a good website for that. Also, Barnes and Noble. You can also do Barnes and Noble in store if it's open. I'm not sure if it's open. And other online retail websites. The downsides of ordering online is that shipping costs will probably make it more expensive than going into a store, and older series might have a higher price, especially when you're talking about like really old comic, like really old, like the original Spider-Man or the original Superman or something like that. So for me personally, if I want to read a comic like that, I do it digitally because it's cheaper. So next, there's libraries. This is one that people don't often think of, but it's definitely a great resource, especially if you're on a budget and you don't want to pay for it. You just want to borrow it and return it. Some libraries also have like digital streaming services that you can access with your library card. But the downsides are it may not have the best catalog. So, for example, Tommy might not find Daredevil Born Again, but he'll probably find some Daredevil, but he might not find that specific comic book because it's kind of just like whatever they have. It could be in bad shape also if that's something that's important to you. So next we have digital comics. So the first, I'm going to talk about a bunch of subscription services. You can on several of these you can buy the individual comics, but I think the world's moving towards like kind of like unlimited or moving towards subscription services over buying each individual one. So the first one's Comixology. Comixology is an Amazon-owned digital comics retailer. You can pay for comics digitally, or you can get their subscription to Comixology Unlimited that costs $5.99 a month, and get some comics for free, but some you have to some like as a reduced price. I forget that there's a certain percentage off that you get from what it would be without the subscription. It also has Image and Dark Horse comics, unlike some of the others that I have on this list. Downsides: not every comic is free. So why I personally decided not to use Comixology was I didn't like having to pay $5.99 a month, and then also on top of that, having to pay every time I did a comic book. I would just prefer to I would prefer to pay something every month and access those for free. So the next one we're going to talk about is Humble Bundle. This is a smaller one, but I wanted to include it because it's supporting charity. This one does, like the name, it lets you get comic book bundles, which are basically single issues that are bundled together. So you get 3, 4, 5 of them, something like that, at the same time, instead of just buying one. Downsides, not as big of a catalog as some of the others, so you might not find exactly what you want, but it is great because it supports charity. Next, we have Marvel Unlimited. So for $9.99 a month or $69.99 a year, you can get access to all the Marvel comics for free. So kind of think of it as Netflix, but for Marvel comics. Uh, and the downsides to this one, I haven't used it personally. I'm looking into it, but it often has technical issues from what I've read. Next, we're going to talk about DC Universe. I'm personally a big fan of this one. I use it. I have the yearly subscription. So for $7.99 a month or $74.99 a year, you can access not all of them, but like a significant amount of DC comics, especially the older ones. It also has curated lists, which makes it easy to figure out what to read. It kind of like does some of the work that we talked about earlier for you. The big selling point for me on it was that it's a streaming service, so you get DC movies, TV shows, and their original content. So I actually bought this before I even knew that there were comics on there, just because I wanted to watch Titans and some of the other TV shows. When you're watching something, it also gives you related comics, which is really nice. Um, the other thing that I haven't seen in many others are that it lets you do panel by panel view, which is really, really helpful, especially when it's confusing. You don't know which panel to read. You don't know which order the panels are supposed to go in, and you don't have to like zoom in on everyone like you do on some digital comics. Some of the newer DC comics aren't available, and it will be shutting down in the next few years due to not making a profit. And it is going to be replaced by HBO Max as far as the streaming content, but I'm not. It hasn't been announced yet whether there are comics on there, so I'm be looking out for that. So we're getting into some manga anime ones now. So first we have Crunchyroll. It comes with anime as well as manga for $7.99 a month. So you do get that added benefit of having anime in the streaming service like you do with DC Universe. Downsides are it's more expensive than the next manga one I'm talking about, and it doesn't have everything. Like not everything is available in America, so so it's kind of like if you know like movies or shows that are on Netflix internationally but not in America, like Avatar up until recently. It's kind of like that where some things are only internationally. So last one, Shonen Jump. This is the cheapest one on this list. It's only $2.99 per month. It has the 3 most recent chapters of most manga for free with the subscription. It allows you to try a series before spending a lot of money on it. Downsides, the for the ones that are only the 3 chapters free, you have to pay for the other ones, so that could be annoying if you're not caught up, and you have to pay for everyone even while paying the $2.99 per month. So here are some general recommendations if you're looking to get into Marvel and DC. So yeah, Batman Year One, which I talked about before. Spider-Man Blue, I decided to go with this one instead of Daredevil because I know that Spider-Man is much more popular than Daredevil. And then you have Iron Man Volume 1, which kind of covers the origin story and the events of the first movie. Next, here's some shonen recommendations for new manga readers. So you have Full Metal Alchemist, My Hero Academia, which I personally like, Eyeshield 21, Dr. Stone, and Bleach. And then here's some for shoujo. Skip Beat, From Me to You, Beauty Pop, Odaman, and Yoda the Dawn. Here are some webtoon recommendations for beginners: Midnight Poppyland, Cursed Princess Club, Sweet Home, and The Little Trash Maid. So now I'm going to kind of give a plug for my comic book and kind of recommend it as a general recommendation to everyone. So here's a sneak peek at that. You guys can read that text there and look at the images. And the social links are below for when I share the comic. Share the presentation. So here's it's time for Q&A. Let's see how much time we have left. Yeah, we have about 7 minutes left. I was planning on having some people try this on their own and then get back to me, but I don't think there's enough time for that. So if anyone has any questions, they can unmute.
What other comic book sources do you recommend as well? Because I've got Comicopia. Have you heard of the Comicopia? The guy on YouTube.
Yes, I go. That's actually my favorite place to go.
Yeah.
But you mean like comic book stores in the Boston area?
Yeah, I usually go to what is it called? The one near Fenway.
Yeah. Is that Newberry Comics?
No, that's I think Comicopia.
Yeah. I love Comicopia.
Yeah.
So I would say some other ones in the area. There's New England Comics, which I really like. That's in I think the closest one to Boston is in Cambridge, so it's a little bit away, but they have a really good catalog. And they have some more chain stores around Boston, Massachusetts, where like everything's kind of like themed. So like one of them is like Silver Age Comics. They have like different themes for each one. I haven't been to all of them. I've just been to the Cambridge one. And then also there's also Newberry Comics. That's not my favorite one, just because
it's such a chain.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think. Yeah, it's a little bit pricey, especially the records.
I 100% agree.
Yeah. I'm not thinking of any others, but I'll message you if I think of more later. Does anyone else have any questions? Let's check the chat. Okay. Okay, yeah, I do see some in the chat here. So Emma says, do you think it'll be adorable and an excellent read for all ages? Yes, I do think so. The basically the general synopsis of the first issue is saving a cat from a tree, so I think it's very accessible, and there's not like a whole lot of like death. Like both of the main character superheroes' parents are alive, so that's that's like a huge so you don't have to deal with the backstory where their parents die. So I think those things make it more accessible than some other to all ages than some other comics. So Leah says, how do we know which comics to avoid if we're beginners? DC and Marvel, there's so many different series. So I don't know if I'd say there's like a ton of comics you need to like avoid. I'm trying to think if there are any. There's certainly ones that are like pretty much like universally hated. Like Spider-Man One More Day. So just I would say like read some reviews. But I can't think of any types of comics that you should avoid. Leah, if you wanna like elaborate on that, like what specifically you mean, like what you're looking to avoid, I can try to give a better answer.
Hey, and excuse any background noise, so I'll keep this
Yeah.
quick. But yeah, I just was curious because there's so many different reboots of, like, say if I like, okay, I want to go and start reading Spider-Man and find out
Yeah.
his origin, but there are like 50 different Spider-Man. So like
Yeah.
I wonder, are there some Spider-Man reboots that are not the greatest for beginners? And if we want to get the original story, how should we go about?
Um. So, there Marvel has never rebooted their universe, so I would just recommend looking at the main universe's 616, the main universe's origin story for Spider-Man, and that will probably get you the good origin story. I think the ones that might be like too out there are the some like not all of them, but many of the like the alternate universe Spider-Mans. Um, I know that one thing you should avoid with Spider that there was one that a lot of people I haven't read it, but there's a one that a lot of people really don't like where he was like replaced with a clone or something like that. So just look out for that one. But if you just look up the main universe's origin story on Comic Book Herald, you should be fine. Uh, any other questions? Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone. I'll put like a Google Drive link in the chat really quick to this presentation, so you guys can look at it later. And I'll also put my email in the chat if anyone has any questions for me later that they just didn't think of right now and they want to discuss it later. So there's the presentation. And that's my email. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, buddy.
Hey, this is Nat. I'm really excited to be a part of WebCon this weekend. You'll be able to find my store link through my WebCon Discord channel, and I'll also be there to answer any questions you may have or just to hang out. You can find my shop link at pk4n.storeenvy.com. I have a variety of different prints for sale this weekend, including my 4x6-inch mini prints, which are normally convention exclusive, so you wouldn't normally be able to buy these online. These are multi-fandom with a lot of variety, so if you're interested, check them out in my shop. All of my other prints have a lot of variety as well, though mostly horror, sci-fi, and cartoons. My smaller prints are $10 each, or 2 for $15, and come in either 8.5 by 11 or A4 size depending on the print. My large prints are all 11 by 17 inches. They're $15 each, or 2 for $25. I have a few different charm designs in my shop. These are all clear acrylic except for the Futurama charms, which are printed on frosted lime green acrylic. The Devilman and My Hero Academia charms are double-sided, and the rest are all single-sided. The Devilman charms have the 80s version of Rio and Akira on one side, and their versions from Devilman Crybaby on the other side. For more photos, make sure that you check out that listing. The My Hero Academia charms just have a different expression on the other side. You should be able to buy any one of these charms individually or at a discount if you buy them in pairs or sets. I also have 2 enamel pins up for sale. The anatomical model pin is a soft enamel and about 2.5 inches. And the Space Gay UFO pin is hard enamel and about 1 inch. And here are the sticker sheets I have up for sale. The Extraterrestrial Horrors and Slasher movie sheets are both about 5 by 7.5 inches and cost $8, while the UFO sheet is a little bit smaller. All of these are durable waterproof vinyl stickers, so they should be great on stuff like water bottles. Next up are some of the sticker sheets I have. There are more on my online store. This isn't all of them. These are priced per set, and they range from about $3 to $5 per set. These are also printed on waterproof vinyl and are hand cut. In addition to sticker sets, I also have individual stickers from series like Gundam and Rick and Morty that aren't pictured here. I also have some sticker sets and individual stickers that are original art, like the anatomical organs and songbird stickers that are up top here. And lastly, in honor of WebCon, I'm going to be taking chibi commissions at my con rate during the convention. These are $25 for a single character or $40 for 2 characters or a couple. These chibis will be in the semi-lineless kind of blocky style that all of these examples are in. DM me or message me on Discord to order. And that's about it. Stop by my Discord channel to chat if you want, and let me know if you have any questions. You can also follow my social media, which are up on the screen, pk4n_ on Twitter, or pk.4n on Instagram. And thanks for checking out my shop. I hope you have a great time at WebCon.
go. Hello, this is Lydia from Okika Papercraft. I'm making the videos for WebCon 2020 in order to showcase my merch. And everything here is available for purchase, so if you want any of this, just DM me on Discord or take a look at my Etsy where I have all of these listed. And here we go. Alright, so listen to me blather on about paper. I'm a modular origamist and a quiller, and as you can see here, I have examples of those two pieces. Modular origami, as you can see with Bulbasaur here, is where you take individual pieces of paper and lock them together to build a larger piece. In my case, I practice 3D origami or Golden Venture folding. And then here we have something called quilling. Quilling is where you take strips of paper and coil it into different shapes. And I personally glue those shapes down onto paper, but you don't have to. So you can see the different patterns evident in my work. You can see Nezuko's pattern that she always has on her kimono. But I have more merch than this, I promise. So I'm going to go through it. Here are the Pokemon sections. I have all of the paper Pokemon I've been blathering on about in the chats. I have Pokeballs, and if you notice, they sit really nice in your hand. Good cosplay prop. Pretty sturdy. Please ignore the falling Pokeballs. And then I also have quilled wall hangings. These are inspired by Sailor Moon and are based off of the color schemes of the Sailor Soldiers. I have Mars right here, Moon's right underneath. And as you can see by the fact that I have 5 of them, I have all of the inners. Outers can be available for request. I do have the stuff that I need to make these. And then I have headbands in pretty much every color you can imagine. This one is actually another Sailor Moon one. It's Sailor Venus's one. And I can make the ones for the other Sailor Soldiers if needed. And if you want the color schemes of any other fan character, I can do that as well. And then I just have some that aren't fan art, like this giant flower vase. I like it just because like you look inside of it and it's like all hypnotic and stuff, right? And then I also have butterfly magnets. These actually go on your refrigerator. They're a pretty sturdy magnet. Hold up a bunch of paper, which is good because that's what magnets are supposed to do. Alright, and here's another vase that you can get hypnotized by. Look down into the spiral. Alright. And then here's where the legions begin. I call them legions just because I have like so many of these. But in here, this is Legion, and Legion is snowflakes. I make Christmas ornaments covered in glitter. It's never too early for Christmas. Mainly because it's never too early for glitter. Then I have this thing. I don't actually know what this thing is. You may have seen it in my listings as cool looking thing, or a Christmas tree topper, or a centerpiece, or something. But I just made it and think it looks cool, so that's all I need. And then here are the candy bowls. They are mainly in Demon Slayer colors. So as you can see here, I've taken the color scheme of the character. This one's Nezuko. You can see from her kimono to her bamboo muzzle to her hair, Howdy, Obi. And I have Shinobu, I've got Rengoku, Zenitsu, I have Madoka over here. Nice twist on her. I also have bears. I normally make these for nurseries, but people just like bears, so I kept making bears. Oh, here are some cards that I make. They're quite mean, so if you have a friend that's like that, so it's like if you're the type of person that no one likes, everyone has a person that card is good for. And then the phone cases. I figured out how to make phone cases out of a clear case and paper. These also have some shininess to them too. And then the last thing I'm going to show you guys is bookmarks. Now, these bookmarks are
leave any comments while they're introducing themselves. And for the panelists, when people pop into the rooms, don't worry, I'll be handling that and moving people in, so you don't have to stress about that during your panel. So feel free to start. I will be here, but I'll just be muted with my video off, so all the attention's on you.
Great. So mental health in the arts, what does that mean? So as far as this panel is concerned, it means two things. Number one, people involved in the arts have a higher risk, according to studies, of mental health issues and mental illness. Number two is that the arts can be a solution to solving mental health issues and mental illness. So we're going to look at both of those today. And so first we'll start with a video that has by Dominic Evans, who couldn't make it from some complications, but did a video introducing everyone. So we'll watch that. Everyone can see my screen? Cool.
Others who occasionally
skip to 1 minute. There we go.
Hi everyone. My name is Dominic Evans, and I am a multiply disabled trans and queer filmmaker, film scholar, and Twitch streamer. I'm sorry I couldn't be on this panel like I originally anticipated. A lot of my work revolves around disability representation, and that includes mental health. I started streaming on Twitch because I saw a major lack of representation for those with physical disabilities on the platform. This was especially true for someone like me who plays games laying down due to neuromuscular disability and chronic pain. As I met others on the platform, what I discovered was I knew streaming and content creating were dealing with some type of mental health struggle. Some who had a diagnosis, and others who occasionally dealt with anxiety or depression. This panel will explore mental health and the arts. Those of us who live with a diagnosis deserve representation, but it starts with recognizing our place in artistic mediums. I'm pleased to introduce you to the various members of this panel. Without further ado, let's get started. First, we have Aizhou Liu. Aizhou is a singer-songwriter, music producer, creative marketer, and freelance model from China who is currently living in LA. Beijing-born and Shanghai-raised, Aizhou grew up in a richly multicultural environment and a vibrant community fused of traditional Chinese and modern Western culture. Her unique upbringing shines through in the music she writes and produces. She firmly believes music to be a vehicle of storytelling and social change. Aizhou is a graduate of Berklee College of Music's Contemporary Writing and Production program. Although she is a classically trained pianist, her writing style also blends influences of pop, rock, electronic, and jazz. For more info on Aizhou, please visit www.aijuumusic.com or find her on Instagram at aijuumusic. Next up is Adilsa Fernandez. Adilsa graduated magna cum laude from Stony Brook University in December 2018 with a BA in psychology, despite being told she would never be able to attend school because of her struggles with psychosis. Adilsa is currently a volunteer member with Sylvia Rivera Law Project, working in shelter organizing and as a peer specialist in Lenox Hill Hospital. She founded Peer Mental Health Alliance, an organization that provides resources, peer-to-peer support, and creative arts programming which aims to end the stigma. Through her activism, Adilsa fought for and assured ADA compliance at Stony Brook. She recently created a Facebook group called Mental Health Pandemic to address the mental health needs surrounding COVID-19, and helped found Disability Underground, which addresses healthcare advocacy and mutual aid surrounding COVID. Furthermore, Adilsa is working with mutual aids in New York City to help with food distribution that creates access for people with disabilities, including homeless people with disabilities. Our next panelist is Sarah Rinderer. Sarah is a science teacher from New Jersey who hopes to spread happiness wherever she goes. She loves traveling, gaming, and creating, and she lives by the motto, never give up, never surrender. Next, I'd like to introduce you to Blythe Schulte. Blythe, a strategic consultant and multi-genre composer, comes from a multi-ethnic, synthetic perspective. She placed her original toy product with Mattel Toys, participated in a virtual reality collaborative with Harvard/MIT, and has previously interned with the Kurland Agency. Her album, Synthetic, debuted at number 7 on Amazon's Broadway and Vocalist charts upon release, to coincide with her appearance as a finalist on ABC's Toy Box. Blythe debuted her original gospel tune, Out of Many One, to an audience of 90 million plus live broadcast. She is a cum laude graduate of the Berklee College of Music. Schulte's Wash Your Hands jingle, featuring CDC guidelines, will be featured on an entertainment product by company Rabbit Tanaka, licensor for creative brands such as Dragon Ball Z, Rick and Morty, and Game of Thrones. She recently released an original blues track, Old LA, available on all streaming platforms. Look out for Blythe's original multi-genre album release this October, featuring some selections from Bearcat, her original musical, and fabulous fellow Berklee alumni. Dominic Martin is our next panelist. Dominic for around 6 years with a keen interest in Doctor Who, which has led him to doing acting and writing within that community. Outside of cosplay, Dominic is a full-time carer for his mother. His mental health has been something that has affected him for several years through depression, and it has always been a challenge for him. But Dominic has always tried to take steps to improve it, even though it has felt like a mountain at times. We also have Justin Ashbrook. Justin is a junior in college at Berklee College of Music. He came there originally in 2017 wanting to be a music teacher and a professional pianist, but now he's planning on opening either a comic book store or a charity related to comic books after he graduates in 2021 with a degree in music business with concentration in entrepreneurship. Justin is also writing a comic book, The Amazing Bug and Plant Girl, which will be released sometimes next month. Beside his love for comic books, he plays piano, writes film and television reviews, and plans for his future business. Finally, we have Justice Armstrong, and I will let them introduce themselves. I'm so glad I got the opportunity to introduce you to all these amazing panelists. And if you'd like to check out my work, please check out filmdis.com for my recent study into disability representation on television, or follow me on Twitter at Dominic Evans.
All right. Thanks for that, Dominic, even though you can be here. So let's, Justice, I tried to contact him. I couldn't get in touch with him. So let's just go ahead with the first question. So part one, establishing the problem. So while mental health issues and mental illnesses are not the same, they are similar and in some instances can be the same for some individuals. A study in Iceland in 2015 published in Nature Neuroscience showed that genetic factors which increase bipolar disorder and schizophrenia are found in 25% more often in people in creative professions, quote unquote, than people who chose less creative professions. Creative professions are like an artist, stuff like that. And an example of a non-creative profession that they used in the study would be like a farmer. Why do you think studies like this claim that people involved in the arts have a higher risk of mental illness? And anyone can, we can just jump. You can just jump in. We don't have to go in any specific order.
If I would, I think, and I don't necessarily agree with that claim, per se, because I don't know what the study is based upon, but 25% I think is probably not, like, it is significant, but also we have to look at whether the study look at people with whether they have genetic influences in that study and whether we have a control group. I would agree that artists definitely do need to be more in tune with our emotions, but that doesn't necessarily mean we can control it, or our mental illness is like something that's out of hand. Well, I think this is something I think the general public, no matter what your profession is going to deal with at some point in your career. But as an arts person, we're just more exposed to their feelings, but I wouldn't say we're more impacted by it per se.
I kind of agree with that. And I saw Mona just added in the comments something that I was basically going to say. I think that people with mental illness are more inclined to be artsy. It's either a form of release. So I think it's, I don't know if it's just a weird correlation that it ends up being like that. I also have to wonder too if that study also looked at other fields, because I'm not in like just an art geared field, but I know a lot of people who struggle with mental illness. So I don't know if this is necessarily something that is just more, or it's just a high enough percent that they said this is a very high percentage, because I think in a lot of fields that we can have that as well.
I agree that it's prevalent in a lot of fields. I see it in tech, I see it in entrepreneurship, I see it in music, dancing, everything else that I've been lucky enough to come into exposure with. And I think it comes from really us as humans needing some sort of outlet to release and express our emotions healthfully. So if that becomes music for you, or drawing, or yoga, or something completely different that I did not list, coding, that's part of the natural human experience. And I think as artists, it's a little bit more amplified because part of business is how well they are able to touch other people through their work and get basically disseminate their message. So I think that it's more widely known that artists are open with their struggles, but I think that it's something that we all face.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say as well, because obviously there's going to be a lot more variables that would have lots of factors into someone's personal health. So it depends on their upbringing and everything like that, as well as the fact in creative professions and industries, there'll be a lot of pressure, whether it's self-induced or coming externally. So I would say in terms of that study, I'm very curious to know what they're based on entirely, but I would say no real safety spot, really. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would actually be interested in that as well. The article I was reading about the study didn't have like much more information, and it didn't. So, so I'd be curious to hear that as well.
This is Ajilsa. Um, and I think the study may not be comprehensive of every element out there. For example, lawyers, doctors, engineers, just to name a few, we don't have studies on them because that profession has been told you cannot even speak about mental health. How dare you? If you even talk about it, you're fired or you're looked at as quote, quote, crazy or quote, quote, weirdo and quote, quote, psycho. So we don't have studies to truly compare with other industries. I think with artists, they're more open, which is what the expression of art is. We tend to explore our emotions and explore our thoughts and explore who we are in our identities, in our environment, in our souls, in our life. So it comes more easy for us to open up and talk about these things. So there might be more research there based on other industries. So I wouldn't say just artists have mental issues or they have more mental issues than other people. I think we're more open to talk about it than other industries.
In the comments too, I see Emma added something along those lines as well, like where artists are kind of they're pushed to really express those through their art forms. They have an outlet for it. So it's a little bit more easily seen. Whereas like in some of my teacher groups, if I were to mention like, oh, I have anxiety, I've seen teachers that jump on like, why do you have anxiety about your job? You should quit. Like, you know, you can't be taking mental health medicine. You need to be like totally perfect to teach these kids, and you don't. But like you said, it's very hush hush in a lot of other fields, whereas art, it's like, okay, we can express this through a dance or through a painting or through our music and show how we're feeling. Where other jobs, it's just, it doesn't matter how you feel, it's just worries, they just worry about what you do. Definitely.
Yeah, all great points, kind of pointing out that that there's not necessarily a causation to that. If it is, it's because of other factors, like people mentioned, the other jobs can't be open about it, stuff like that. So let's move on to the next question. According to a 2015 report, I don't know why all these are 2015, released by the U.S. Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, 10% of people in the arts industry drank alcohol to excess at least once a month. 13.7% use illicit drugs at least once a month. And the arts industry had the third highest percentages of these of any industry in the report. Why do you think this is?
I think some of it has to do with the romanticism that artistic types, some people may tend to have about drugs and alcohol. I have had creative writer friends that told me I need to do mushrooms because Lewis Carroll did, and personally, like I don't support that. I think that we need to focus on our wellness and our health, and if drugs and alcohol are something that's going to be harmful to that, I don't think it's worth the art. I know a lot of people would disagree with that, but I think part of it is really like the romanticism. So many role models, like I'm super into jazz music. If you look at Miles Davis or Chet Baker, like a lot of them did coke, but that's not really what makes them the iconic musicians. And it truly was filled with a lot. I don't think it's the drugs that makes them, even though a lot of, I think, misconceptions happen. So it's really good if we can help people get educated and point them towards resources that show them, you know, you can be successful and you can be as healthy as you're trying to be.
This is Ajilsa. I have to really second that. They really are romanticizing it. And going back to what I said earlier, if you see a lawyer doing drugs, you're going to lose your bar. If you see a doctor doing drugs, again, you're going to lose your credentials, colleges, so forth. I think they're more hush hush, And I have seen doctors and lawyers who do drugs and are psychedelics and into that. In the art realm, and I think that that's good to point out, in the art realm, we are open once again to explore that. I see artists who use psychedelic drugs as a form of expression, as a form of connecting realms and exploring spirituality, mental struggles, like so many things. It's not just mental health, right? It's more deeper than that because that's art. Going in deep and who you are, what are your thoughts, what are your emotions. And again, I think it's just creating that space. I don't think artists per se have a higher rate of substance abuse. It's more, they're more open. And I agree with, I think it's because of this like people romanticize it. You know, you have the guitarist with the cigar, how cool, or the painter who's popping mollies, and so it's really the culture more than I think the people who actually do it.
I think in addition to the culture, it's important to point out that I think it's a lot of competition. And a lot of times, I think artists, we see a lot more of that in the field. Art was something I wanted to get into, and then I wanted to go to college for it. And then I kind of panicked and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not good enough. And I ended up totally switching my career paths for that. And I know a lot of friends who are into art, and some of them pick up like drug use or alcohol use as a coping mechanism because you can be trying your hardest. And if you try your hardest, like I went into biology, I try my hardest at biology and I can get an A on the test. You try your hardest in art and it might be your best art piece ever, but somebody might have something better. And I think sometimes that's what artists end up using to cope with that. And again, there's competition in other fields and other jobs too. So that kind of mix of, well, it's less hush hush. They talk about it a little bit more too. And they could use it as, oh, well, I'm not drinking to cope with my anxiety. I'm drinking to get better ideas. I'm not doing drugs to, forget everything. I'm doing it to see some cool, like, mushroom visions and get that down. So that's what I think it would be. But that's just, from that stress that I think that is tacked onto it and kind of a mix of the two.
Yeah, I would have to agree in that respect as well. I mean, in terms of its use in the art world, I mean, it can be, again, yeah, it is both a case of others can be hush hush, whereas I'd say it's not that many in the grand scheme of things that would use it in that way. Obviously, I don't know the particular stats, but yeah, I mean, I'm just drawn to remembering how it was covered in representations of the art world, like in shows like BoJack Horseman, and you can see all the alcohol and the drugs being used in that sense. Obviously, that's very detached from reality, but it's still a case of that romanticization, as was said before. So, yeah, I have nothing really to add to that.
And to add to that, I also wanted to say there's also this push. So I've worked in the film industry as well. And if anyone's been in the film industry behind the scenes, you know that you're working 11 hours straight. No joke. Sometimes 16 hours. So this show that you've seen for 3 months, that was built in 1 day or 2 days. It depends on the budget. It depends on the industry. So you really have a lot of work. This is how they are producing shows in a few days, but once they show it, it's prolonged, and so people are exploited oftentimes behind the scenes. And we have heard so many models and artists talk about this. They are themselves picking up the drug habits, but they're introduced to the drug habits. So oftentimes what you see is that people are saying, hey, take coke or take speed because it's going to help you push through it. So we see a lot of, and I was reminded about this through Sarah, we see a lot of push on drugs for the competition. Like you got to stay up and you got to stay focused and you got to finish this project, or you have timelines. And how do you do that? So pick up the drug habit that way. And one of the biggest industry that talks about it is models. Models say that once they enter the industry, they are literally offered coke. Each model, they're like, hey, just take this through to make it, because their photo shoots are going on for hours, 11 hours straight, but continuously. And also they have to keep the weight off, so the drugs may help with that. It's a lot of exploitations as well.
Yeah, definitely. And then from what I know about the music industry, I think there's a lot of similarities there. A lot of people will spend like 11 hours in a practice room or in a recording session. Um, and also you talked about like getting like underpaid for your work. I think that that's common with music as well. I want to ask a follow-up question about this, because it seems like a lot of you guys are saying that um, that artists use substances even though they don't necessarily need to. So, what are some of the ways uh, we can convince artists to not use substances?
So this is a just, I
Sorry.
wouldn't necessarily say to convince them. I think
Yeah,
everybody has the freedom of choice, and
right.
you know, yeah. But with that being said, I think one of the most important things, and we are starting to see artists like Demi Lovato, Catherine Zeta-Jones, people who have mental health diagnosis, they're starting to talk about these demands behind the industry. And I think one of the biggest things that we can start talking about, particularly to artists and the industry, is taking time off. And and in the long run, not convincing the artist, but convincing the industry to change the layout. Because 11 hours straight, a lot. And you're just like work, 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 work. You have to have breaks. And what does those breaks look like? What does mental health in an artist space looks like? What's that we don't have to be subjected to? Because thinness is what we're subjected to. That we don't have to follow and feel healthy. You know, I think, and we've seen that in France. Like, if anybody has heard about that research and the legislation that's been passed in France, they actually made it a legislation where industries cannot mandate models to be thin because it's unhealthy. You know, they're pushing them to extremes. So I think once we start pushing the shift to the industry rather than individuals, we may see better mental health for the individuals.
I think Isa, you were saying something before, but you're muted.
Yeah, sorry. So I just want to kind of like point it out, because prior to moving to the US, because I was offered like kind of a pro model kind of career path for me, but I feel that I do agree with a lot of things like you were saying, Lilsa, and I just like I think there are a lot of expectations of like what's what kind of standards are set upon me that I have to like take, you know, it's like a box that I have to check or something. I mean, the same could be said about music, but it's way looser. I think, you know, musicians will not, like other musicians, I think will not judge you if you don't take drugs, I think, for example. Because I think although it is romanticized, it's not a requirement. And also adding on to that, I think the only, you know, taking drugs or anything recreational is a freedom of choice, especially, you know, in the US. And I feel that self-care is just the most important thing for us, because we have to remember, before we're artists, we're human. So in order to be a human, we have to rest and we have to take time to take care of ourselves. And so doing all of that will ensure the art that we create are genuine and that we're not overexhausting our bodies to create something. So that's just what I feel about this topic. Thanks.
I think piggybacking off of that, I have this theory that if you are creatively exhausted, you will only create creatively exhausted art. So I think it's really important to, well, first of all, like to actually go with the question, I think we need to just like this, I think, for creative types, because the more that we are able to educate ourselves and educate ourselves together, whether that's doing research on our own or with other people, the better we are off to make decisions. It's like with anything, like you don't go and take a driver's test without studying for it. So if you're going to look at drugs as an outlet, then you need to get educated on the good things and the bad things about it. And me or no one else can make that decision for you, but I do think it's our responsibility to provide people information when we can. And I think as far as like getting exhausted goes, it's really important that we try to initiate some sort of systemic movement or change. I don't know how that would happen. I've literally been locked in a room without food or water for 12 hours and then sent out to go sing. This was not in like super recently, but I just think a lot of artists or people who have been artists have experiences like that, and it's not okay. I know that that can also be said for ER doctors who literally don't sleep for weeks. So I think that that's also something that at times you understand what you're signing on for. But eventually, like in an idealistic world, I would like to see that change, or little by little make it more acceptable for people to feel like they can eat when they're on their job, or drink water, or take a break to go do yoga or work out if it's going to help them get awake.
Definitely. I would piggybacking right onto that. I was going to say, I think the big thing in preventing, bad habits forming is to have those good options available, making them known to artists and saying, whether there's like a quiet space or a yoga room, something where you can get rid of that stress, and also like, when you have to wait for a certain amount of time, that you can do that healthily instead of reverting to other things. Because if we make that more known, if we make that the more popular option, because right now, when we look at media and we look around, a lot of those things are really revolving around drugs and alcohol and going out and partying, and that's what they show like a lot of artistic types doing. But I think somebody mentioned in the comments that they're like, oh, I go on like a marathon to think about things. That's something that like I probably, honestly, a marathon would probably be very unhealthy for me because I'm very unfit. But like it's showing that, okay, we can have those options available as well, and having them in creative spaces especially. So whether it's providing good food to eat, so that way somebody's not sitting there locked in a room for 12 hours without food, or providing like a treadmill if they're sitting there getting bored, and something that they can do and just kind of get their mind racing while they walk and they can think. But yeah.
Yeah, I say communication and education are really the key, and if you're trying to really convince someone that it's not the right route, I mean, obviously there is freedom of choice. So I think the best you can really do is just make sure that the information is all clear and you know what you're getting into. But as well as that, just really just make sure that all of the other options, as was said before, are available to the best extent that you can, and hopefully minimize on the peer pressure as well, since that can also be a factor as well.
Okay, so I want to move on to the second part of this discussion, which is, well, we've already touched on it, I think, about, but just how I have my questions organized here in terms of kind of solving these problems. So for many people, getting help is not a choice and they can't get help. But for many others, they do have a choice to get help, whether it be substance abuse, mental illness, just mental health problems in general. But they still choose not to. Why do you think this is? And how do we, I think I used the wrong word last time with convince, but like, how do we encourage those people who can get help to get help?
So I have to say, when asking for help, we have to be conscious of marginalized communities. And in marginalized spaces, there isn't mental access. It's not as easy as people who have money or have the insurance and the connections. So I think that should be said automatically, because you have a lot of artists who are freelancers and belong to marginalized communities. It's very hard to have that access, particularly to therapists of color, LGBTQIA therapists, or TGNC therapists. It's very difficult because the mental health industry in itself is white supremacist. They're built by mostly white therapists. The the schooling that you need is very challenging for marginalized community. So I think before we even recommend to seek help, we need to build the help. And what does that help look like? We need to be able to create the access to educational systems so that more marginalized people can get into the space, so that we can have better access to mental health. So that's first off. And second off, being able to provide social based mental health. We think about mental health, we think CBT, which is cognitive therapy, or dialect therapy, or these therapies. But guess what? If you live an example in poverty and you're hungry, what good is it to you to talk every single week with a therapist and do cognitive therapy if you're still hungry? Or if you don't have housing, what good is it for you to talk to a therapist every single week, but you're still struggling with housing? So on more systemic change, holistic change, I think, we're still going to struggle. And I want to point that out before moving on to how to support people, because I wanted to say we're leaving a lot of people without support. So that's first. We have to have a systematic change. Now, encouraging people to speak up, I think that starts with us, the peers, the people who have gone through the mental health struggles, that when we're sharing our stories openly and without shame, it helps others say, wow, I heard that person speak, and feel more comfortable in their skins, whether they want to share or don't want to share, up to them. But it allows for that comfortability so then they can seek help. And also the community being able to collect therapists or links or ways to connect artists to providers, because when you're struggling, it's very hard to do that research yourself. So if the industry itself provides that outlet, or even creates community-based therapy, meaning not therapy, peer-based support. That's what I meant, peer-based support. If the industry itself can do that, that's a way to, one, eliminate the lack of access, and two, be able to create a more long, sustainable way where one, people can come out, and two, people can get support.
Hey, Justice just was able to join us. So, Justice, we're talking about how to one increase what Alilsa just said about like trying to increase access to people getting the help they need, and number two, for people who have access to it but don't want help, how do we encourage them to seek out help? And you can also introduce yourself quickly.
Well, I'm Justice. I apologize being late. I had issues with just being in a different time zone over here. Sorry, could you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, sure. So we're talking about how we increase access for people to get the help they need, whether it be like a substance abuse problem or a mental illness or just a general mental health problem. And also the second part would be for people who have access to it but choose not to have it, how do we encourage them to get the help they need?
Yes, for the question of access, I find the internet is definitely a very valuable resource. I think everyone, especially in the time of coronavirus, is finding this out. There are a lot of great free online resources for remote therapy and counseling. We can make available to people who may not have health insurance or financial resources to be able to get help in the first place, and making those resources publicly known, sharing it with people in your online community, making that available can be very important. And for people who have access but may not be inclined to pursue help, one of the things I was talking about with some friends yesterday, I notice a lot of dialogue surrounding mental health support, whether that's therapy, addiction counseling, the suicide hotline. focuses a lot on what we call staying in the present moment, which sounds like a cliche, but you'll notice that theme recurs a lot. Like I've noticed when I was in the middle of my you get the same advice from a lot of people, which is just take it one day at a time. Do what you can to get through today. All those things that narrow your time horizon, just to make it manageable, to function in. You don't have to have all of your issues sorted out for your whole life or week or month or year or anything. But if you can make it through today, if you can make it through the next few minutes, if you can make it through the hour, that becomes a little bit more manageable. So for people in your life who are, maybe resistant to pursue treatment, a lot of it, it's not because they don't want help. It's more than likely because it doesn't feel manageable to them, or it doesn't feel worthwhile to pursue treatment when they feel like there's so much weight or so much pressure that pursuing any kind of help seems counterproductive. To get them to see that perspective, you want to encourage them to think smaller and start with just little pieces of time at a bit, where if it could become manageable to get help, to communicate, or to just put yourself in a better spot concerning your mental health. If you can do that just a little bit at a time for minutes or hours or days at a time, that can expand outward to further time horizons down the road, and outward to other people within your community.
Yeah, great point. I just hope to add to that a little bit, because I think, the society still puts a lot of stigma around, depression and mental health and issues like that, because I just think people sometimes see it as a sign of weakness. And I just really, really disagree, because I've seen some of my strongest friends that I know that suffer from it. It's not to do with strength or weakness. It's just a phase I think humans go through, because we're natural. We feel these emotions as part of our human existence. We just have to acknowledge that it's there. And also, I think, the communication part that you said in the beginning, Lisa, is like what I really agree on. It's just we need to be more open and be more supportive of one another through the process. And also with the access, for the point for access to therapy, I also think sometimes people do have access to therapy, but choose not to pursue it because, first, I think they may not want to unleash their own problems and project it onto other people, or they feel like, or they don't believe in themselves that they can stick through it, or it's necessarily going to help, even though they do want to be helped. So I think the more we can definitely try to educate people and making help more accessible is definitely going to, help people when they're dealing with these situations.
Yeah, I think that's a really thorough and thoughtful answer, in a lot of ways. It kind of inspired me to answer too. I think it also, going off of the last two answers and everything, it depends on what works for you. And I think another thing is that if you don't feel like you're worth it, you're not going to do anything to help yourself. Like, if you're constantly hating on yourself, you're not going to care. You're not going to think about how can I get better. You're just going to stay in this slump and it's going to go downhill from there. But I think as people, we can provide encouragement to others. So don't be mean, obviously, unless you're, tasing your friends if they're okay with it. I think that we can be supportive in this highly competitive, for some reason, community of business people and creative people. Like, I cannot tell you how many times I have seen people just, I've walked into a room and they decided that they do not like me because I am also female, or I have like nice hair, or because of something that I've done that they heard, whether it's true or not. This happens in all communities. So first of all, like, be nice. And that includes being nice to yourself, because if you don't do what you need, then you're not going to be very much help to other people. You're not going to be nice to them. It's going to be this whole terrible thing. So going back to the actual question, how this relates, I think it depends on what works for each person. So if you have an inclination to use your art as a therapeutic mechanism, do research on it, talk to other people, or if you want to seek professional help in addition to that, you can do that too. It's a combination of whatever works for you. Like, personally, when I'm super out of it, color combinations and synesthetic, so I see colors with every sensory stimuli, and it's something that just kind of gets me refocused and going again. So I think it's up to us to find our tools and help others to find their tools, whether that's a more traditional route or a combination of traditional and new. If you're a researcher like me, maybe you go do a bunch of research on different kinds of art therapy and you do that, or you can take a class for it, or you can seek help. All of these are very valid options, but the main thing is be nice to yourself, because otherwise you're going to be really unpleasant to be around. And if you are nicer to yourself, you will do better things. It's important.
Yes,
Ooh, I'm still here. I just want to let you guys know that my camera just died.
No problem.
Yeah, I was just going to add on to that as well. I've been in the position of being somebody who's been refusing help for quite some time, mainly due to really bad experiences in trying to get help. As in England, don't want to sound a bit too harsh, but the mental health system here isn't the best. There's a lot of referrals, and then when you do get to see somebody, it depends on the person you get, because sometimes they can just not be helpful at all, and they'll just submit some really generic advice even when you're pouring your heart out to them. So what really helped me more was, in fact, the communication aspect of being able to be a bit more open with people, instead of just going to the GP and ending up being, instead of being given therapy, being offered antidepressants and things like that, because I was always had a very big confidence issue in terms of that sort of thing. So like the others have said, I found that being able to talk about it with peers and being able to utilize those feelings in a more creative outlet was a bit more helpful than the attempt at seeking more professional help. So sometimes you can create an outlet for yourself, but in more extreme cases, then you really should. It's a tricky one. It's a tricky one, because again, personal experience, it's they can be very poor, but I guess it does depend on the luck of the draw, really.
So I totally agree with that, Dominic. I myself have had weird experiences with like therapy and therapists. I've had one that it was going well and then just something happened and I was just like, nope, I'm better. I'm just going to stop seeing you. Or I've had some that I've seen for 1 or 2 visits and it just doesn't click. So what I like to do, and because again, like therapy can really be a hit or miss and it's hard to open up to new people and just have them turn you away. I think part of what we need to do, and especially as somebody who's found some techniques that work for myself, is I like to just like, if anybody asks about it, I will share what those things are. And especially for those who don't have access to actual therapy, I think it is definitely part of our job as people who are aware of what's going on to sit there and say, these are some resources that I've used. These are some techniques that I can use to calm myself down. And whether it is something like Blythe was saying, where she does like an art like color scheme that she likes to put together, or I like to practice like grounded breathing and like those kind of like meditative states and things like that. And I think making sure that we expose the community to those kinds of things. And when we have, friends that we see struggling, or in my case, it's a lot of times students, I'm open of talking to them about, struggles that I've dealt with and things that I've used. And in turn, it kind of opens up this discussion that's like this, and making sure that we do spread it and don't just say, oh, hey, I'm struggling. I have like OCD and anxiety. It's also saying, okay, I have this, but I have some techniques that work. Do you want to know anything that could help yourself? Or like, I'm really struggling and I could really use some help, and and it's hard to get to that point, but not being afraid to reach out as well.
Yeah, I think like one more small point is something that like actually I joke turned me on to again is yoga. Like if you do yoga or meditative breathing, it can really help you feel more centered. I also believe in like daily cardio just to like take aggression out. I don't know if any of you others are kind of angry like me, but personally I think that really helps, and I just wanted to like say I definitely agree with that point.
And also, guys, like I don't know, I also to like get rid of my stress, I box kind of like a few times a week because like I think if I look at myself in the mirror or I look at something I'm frustrated about, it's good. Like I don't necessarily think physical violence is the answer towards mental illness, but I think but exercising is definitely like a way better way to deal with this problem as opposed to alcohol and drugs. And I mean, whatever. I think like also, like sitting in a room a lot, whether we're with people or with ourselves. So I think just getting the blood flowing. I think adrenaline is a real thing, and when we can get our blood pumping and find our systems, when we're happy, I think we're less likely or more open to dealing with mental issues and problems. Yeah.
So, Blythe mentioned art therapy. I want to talk about kind of like how art can help people with these issues. So, how can art? So, I guess just how can art help people with these issues, and what are some other ways of like minimizing stress? Yeah, I know I saw you talked about like exercising and stuff.
I can go with that one. Just in terms of tools and toolbox, I found probably whatever mental health issue you're struggling with, knowing you're not alone is probably one of the most important parts in just making sense of that issue. Um, Having people who understand what you're going through and can listen to you and help you process what it goes through, but also just general companionship. I found that like even sometimes if you might not have like a person nearby or the ability to really communicate what it is you're going through, honestly, even just having like pets there for emotional support animals. I don't know if you can see here. I have this is Foggy. This is my one of my emotional support animals that I've had for about 2 years now, who's a very good friend, very therapeutic. He doesn't really want to be picked up, but he's you wave hello? Hello. Hello. All right. I'll let him go away.
What's your cat's name?
That's Foggy.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah.
Foggy. And then show your one over here. This is Stella. She's a girl.
Oh.
It's also a very, very sweetheart. Trying to get her to look at the camera. Hello. Hello. Okay, that's fine. Anyway, yeah, those are my cats that I always have to show off. They're great friends, great mental health therapy support professionals, and also I think as you mentioned on the point of even drugs and alcohol as a coping mechanism. We might get more into this later, but I've actually found that like developing a more healthy and sustainable relationship with certain types of drugs, not necessarily alcohol. I think alcohol is usually a no-go, especially if you're dealing with like anxiety or depression. Won't take your problems away, but there's a lot of more new interesting research surrounding some of these other drugs or substances that we've been taking for granted. In Oregon, we're working on decriminalizing psilocybin for therapeutic treatment. So not just like recreational use, but for guided mental health professionals to administer, traditionally known as mushrooms in like a therapeutic setting. So that's on the ballot for 2020, and we're working on pushing that forward as a new kind of treatment, and I'm really excited to see where that goes. And I think it's something that we overall shouldn't be discounting. I think, obviously treatment from a doctor is absolutely recommended, go with what you go with, but as with anything, you just want to find what works for you, find the kind of medicines that work and things that you can develop a healthy relationship that'll help you function.
Probably talk on it a little bit, but
should have some music playing. Gonna try and keep it going. I got the timeline here that I made in Google. It's not great, this timeline, like visually, but it's got all the information on it, which is important. Oh, I got some music going. Can I make a music request there? Yes. I've got a handy dandy helper here. It's going to be checking out questions. If anybody posts any questions into the panel chat, I'm not going to be reading it. He's going to read it and pass it to me. And I'll try and address it if it's topical, but we really got to kind of move because there's a lot to go through. So again, I'm going to start a couple minutes. I think maybe something fun we can do while I'm waiting here. Hello. Nice to see you. I'm gonna keep saying for the next couple minutes as people come in. If you're not used to Discord, there's a grid thing in the corner. If you're looking at my screen, because I am sharing my screen, it might be tiny. If you keep tapping that grid thing, then you'll see I am gonna be sharing things both. Oh gosh, I gotta stop clicking that. I'm gonna be sharing things both on my screen and right here. I'm gonna be playing some show and tell. So I'm gonna be going back and forth between the two. You can probably click between the two. Starting in just a few minutes, and I'm going to keep saying this over and over. Please pay attention to the grid thing. I'm going to be sharing things here, and I'm going to be sharing things on my screen. Just some things don't make sense to share physically. They make more sense to share just right there, I'm gonna be moving quick, so we're gonna try and keep the questions at the end if it's super important. I've got someone checking the chat channel, so leave some chats, but we are asking you to kind of hold the questions till the end. I'm gonna go through all of Harley, and it's gonna take a long time. She's been a character for over 25 years. There was a big 25th celebration a couple years ago, 2017. So there's a lot to go through. This character's changed a lot over the years. Let me see what time it is. I'm going to give it another 2 minutes to Just get people in here. I think this video I have too is maybe about that. So I'm gonna start with these are sort of like the pre-Harley Quinn origins. Now, if you guys are familiar, Arlene Sorkin was the original voice of Harley, and also just how she is, sort of the inspiration for Harley. This video here of her on Days of Our Lives, see, they're 1980. I've looked up, I can't figure it out either. I don't know if it's 1970 something, I don't know, 1980 something. Yep, show off the booty. So, this sparkle outfit, it comes up again later in 2004. They bring it out in the Harley and Ivy comic, which I have. I'll be showing a little bit too. But so this was the inspiration for Harley, was when she was on Days of Our Lives doing this version. I would turn the sound. I'm gonna turn the sound on slightly.
Voice, and she.
It's people talking.
Days of Our Lives. She used to be.
So the audio for that video is kind of like. But Harley is the iconic voice. Anybody else is just kind of almost coming close to it, but not really. They ain't getting there. At least in my opinion. Which, by the way, spoiler, this is going to be highly opinionated, this panel. I don't discourage on anybody's cosplays. I'm put that out there. You know, you cosplay what you want, you own it, that's yours, and good for you. Some of these designs I'm going to pick apart. That is not any reflection on anyone's cosplay or anyone's choice to do that cosplay, and this is my opinion of that piece of art, basically. So, getting back to origins of Harley Quinn, as we dive right in here. And again, please use the grid thing so you can see both my screen and me as I show and tell, but we're going to do, oh, I think I already have this open. Yes, so I have it open twice. Let me try and have it open once, because otherwise it'll get silly. So if you look here, we have concept art for Harley Quinn, and people are actually cosplaying this version. They made a statue of that version. You can find that concept art in this book. If you look at my screen, I'm going to hold that up again. Just like to see what I'm doing here. So this book is great. It explains so much of Batman the Animated. So Harley was first on screen in Joker's Favor episode of Batman the Animated. It was September 11th, 1992. Easy to remember September 11th. Anyway, this book is great. It goes through so much of Batman the Animated. It's got this huge splash page. I think they still reprint this book. It's got like everything you'd ever want to know about Batman the Animated. And it's got a big old section on Harley, and there didn't used to be much about Harley at all at this time. I've been cosplaying Harley for a very long time. I've been a fan of her since she appeared on the television set. I was watching it. So it's been a long time. I think I first cosplayed Harley back in maybe it was 97 or 98. So it's been a long time. At any rate, this book gets into just sort of all the Batman the Animated years, and then starts to touch upon the Batman and Robin adventures, which is a couple years later with different animators. They I'm going to show you guys a picture. It even touches a little on Batman Beyond here. So the Batman and Robin adventures, they simplified a lot of the characters. If you look at the Penguin, he's very different from the Batman, the animated Penguin, where Batman the Animated, they took a lot of inspiration from Batman Returns, but Batman and Robin adventures, they changed a little. They tried to go a little more comics because, you know, some of the choices there, like having Catwoman as blonde, that wasn't really a thing until Michelle Pfeiffer was blonde Catwoman, and like having Danny DeVito as that really gnarly Penguin. He was like really gentlemanly until that point with like Burgess Meredith and stuff. So there panel on Harley, I should probably talk about Harley. But at any rate, what I'm saying is they changed a lot of things. They didn't change Harley so much, but they did make that character more like fleshed out. Because she started in the animated, unlike most of the other characters start in the comics. I think Renee Montoya, I think she appeared briefly in the comics and then she was mostly fleshed out through Batman the Animated. I have another comic to share with you. Actually, let me go back to pictures because got a lot of pictures here. So if you follow me to my screen and not the physical me this time. So again, origins. Bruce Timm, Paul Dini, creators of Harley Quinn, the Bruce Timm version of Harley. When they go to Batman and Robin adventures, they streamline everything. They take out a lot of the details and the shading and things. This is still Batman the Animated. This, I think, is sort of the iconic Harley. Here's her first appearance, Joker's Favor. It is to laugh, huh, Mr. J? Love it. Here's Harley's first cosplay. Harley changes her outfit more than any other character in this show. I really believe that. I don't think Bruce Wayne's had as many costume changes, even though he's like the main character of Batman. So here she is as a cop. We got her as a mermaid. Here she is as a lawyer in The Man Who Killed the Bat. I think I served him a subpoena once. It was a small subpoena. Harley and Ivy episode. I'm gonna get verklempt. This is when they first really started getting their characters to love each other, you know? At least that's what we say, you know. Was it true at the time? I don't know, but this is really like the beginning of it. They're first meeting each other, they're living together. And I have seen people cosplay even this version of Harley, like them in their 90s here. Brings us to her first comic book appearance. Although Batman Adventures, this is not the canon Batman universe. This is kind of like, you know, here's the kids cartoon version of the comic book of the TV show that's out at the time. But this is her first comic appearance. This comic book, mighty pricey. Here we have Harley's kind of standalone episode. So here she is with Batman. This is Harlequinade. Oh, I hear someone talking. Harley's Holiday is another great episode. We have this outfit here. She wasn't actually wearing it in the episode, but it is this title card. And they made an action figure statue thing of this too. Every version of Harley gets some. This is the outfit she was mostly wearing that episode. A lot of people say, oh, it's the episode where Harley gets to use a tank. She doesn't use a tank. She almost gets run over by a tank. She never controls that tank. You guys are thinking of Tank Girl, which I'll get into later too. So here is Batman and Robin Adventures. So this is several years after the animated series. They started the Batman and Robin Adventures, and we have Mad Love. And we have Dr. Quinzel, and we're really fleshing out Harley here. And here we have Mad Love. This is a nice old copy, because I got this, like, way back when. I don't even think I was in high school. It's lovely. This is, like, the iconic Harley Quinn origin story. When people go to, like, remake Harley Quinn origin stories and stuff, they always use pieces of this. This is the iconic story. The 90, people are always cosplaying that. People always cosplay Dr. Quinzel, that's this. There's this lovely, like, fantasy. This comic book is great. I highly recommend getting a copy. They reprint it a lot because it's pretty popular. But that is her origin story, written by Paul Dini and Bruce Timm. So anything about her getting dumped into a vat, that is way later, and we will get to that. So let's go back to some of these desktop pictures. Got a few more for classic Harley Quinn. She's a dentist. That's in Mad Love. Blue shirt in the comic. A lot of people do Dr. Quinzel with a red shirt and black tie, which is in the comic. Also the blue shirt and white tie. There's the 90. Now we're moving on. This is 2004. Oh, I should probably put this in a different slide. At any rate, so remember we were talking about Arlene Sorkin? This is when they used that Arlene Sorkin look for this episode here. And that is 2004. I'm gonna go back a little bit from before that. So we're gonna go do some more show and tell maybe. I have this handy dandy timeline. So here we are, the debut, Batman Adventures. Oh yeah, Thrill Killers. I think maybe I put that slide in the other folder. Pull this up again. All right, comic debut. So we've got the first canon appearance of Harley Quinn. And I've got a big old stack of comics to go through, you guys. So this is her first appearance. It happens in No Man's Land. This is year 2000. I think I was just referencing the Harley and Ivy comic. I don't know if you guys are looking at me or at the screen. Harley and Ivy, if you want to look at me, that's this comic 2004. I'm going to try and go through this timeline-wise. It's a little difficult too. But here we got the Harley Quinn graphic novel. I'll go back to me for a second and just shrink this so I can see myself. Helps me present to you guys. Okay, looking at me. So, Harley Quinn graphic novel comes out during No Man's Land. So the story of her origin ends up being very tied to No Man's Land, which is why I think they changed it later, because with the New 52 and the Rebirth and all these like reboots that everyone's doing, like DC's doing it, Marvel's doing it too. They didn't want to call back to those old stories, I feel like, which is kind of silly because all they do is call back to No Man's Land constantly. At any rate, she gets very tied to it. Ivy comes and rescues her, gives her superpowers, shoots her up. She explains a little bit. There's like a tiny touch of mad love in here, but not much of it. I think they kind of figure, oh, if you're doing Mad Love, you would just read Mad Love. It didn't come out that long before this came out. But yeah, again, this is a great story. It does make her origin, though, completely tied to No Man's Land, which is why I think they redid it. I'm going to keep moving on. I'm going to put this back in its cover. Slides. All right, I'm going to go back to my desktop here. And pull up some more pictures. What do we got? I want it. There we go. Yes. So that is Harley Quinn from Brave and the Bold. The Batman the Animated stopped, and we got some other weird versions of Harley and some other cartoons. Oh, here's the one I was looking for. So this actually came out before her first canon appearance. This is another Elseworlds. This is the Batman Thrill Killers, where they have this female Joker and female Harley together. Pretty neat. Around the same time as Harley Quinn gets her canon appearance, the Birds of Prey TV series came out. It was not very good, but Harley was the main person, the main bad guy there, the antagonist. These are so out of order. I'm sorry, you guys. That's the one I'm looking for. Grandma Harley. So this is Batman Beyond. We had the Return of the Joker movie. We had the Dee Dees, who end up being Harley's grandchildren. There's Grandma Harley. The Batman. Wanted to bring that up. 2005. We got the Batman version of Harley Quinn. This time she's a talk show host that gets turns into Harley Quinn from the Joker. I like cosplaying this version. I like having a giant head. You'll notice they're still keeping with the Jester costume. We don't really move away from the Jester costume for a while. Come on, where's my arrow? Can I just move it that way? It's the end of the slides. Yeah, because these are out of order. So, coming back to me, or actually, I'm gonna look at this timeline, figure out where I am on it. So we got No Man's Land, we got Birds of Prey, Return of the Joker movie, That's 2000. So let's see. Not long after we have Harley's comic debut, and No Man's Land finally dies down. Coming back to me on this. We get Harley in her first comic, like her first self-titled comic. Yay! And this is a great comic. I love it. It does a lot of good things. One good thing it does, she breaks that fourth wall. A lot of people like to say, they're just doing that because Deadpool is doing that. Well, like Harley's been doing that for a very long time too. Deadpool didn't immediately come out and start like breaking the wall, and neither did Harley, but she's doing it in this comic. So I don't know what to tell you. So this comic's great. Some things get established, like Gotham City Sirens stuff. Harley's got a gang. Let's see, what's the year on that? So that's 2000. So a couple years later, they come out with Gotham Girls. There's also webisodes. They're really fun. You can look them up on YouTube. We got the Harley Scouts. Love it. These are great. I don't have every single one of them, but her name Montoya, got a lot of good things going on here. Ivy, Harley. Love it, love it. Because we're working towards Sirens. Gonna go into some more Harley appearances through time. Harley was in Catwoman. This is really this story here with Catwoman. It's really good because not only do you have some more like character building of Harley because she's just kind of going into Catwoman's head and figuring out some things. She's actually helping Catwoman work through some stuff because she gets into Catwoman's past. So you see both like Harley working on using her psychology, but also Catwoman getting her past sort of all set. And then let's see, got the Harley and Ivy comic. This is another like fun adventure with Harley and Ivy bonding. I think it's important that they're bonding. I don't know what to tell you. It's a pretty classic story. Harley and Joker have a fight, and Ivy and Harley go together. Something kind of like Holiday Nights is another very good episode of like Harley and Ivy bonding. The one with Livewire is another good episode, just like to show Harley and Ivy get it, but Livewire. So the Harley and Ivy comics, those come out in 2004. So after Harley's already been established canon, after Harley's comic, her self-title comes out, we get this. And that's when, like I said, we go back to that Arlene Sorkin image of her in that pink outfit. This is Hollywood Harley one. It's a lot of fun. All right, let me look at my timeline. Checking with the time. All right. About here, I want to get to, so yeah, The Batman, the cartoon that comes out 2005. So that was after Birds of Prey, that was after Gotham Girls, all this. So moving on, we get a Batman Hush. This is a great story. I have a comic book form too, but it's a little easier to show you guys things from, like, let's see if I can turn to Harley. She might be in part 2 of this versus book 1. Yeah, Ivy's in this one. I think Harley's in the second. But this is a great story, drawn by Jim Lee. It was very iconic at the time. Everybody's real into Hush. Harley is still in the Jester outfit. I'm going to keep adding. That does not change for a bit. So we're still, this is like, I'm going to sort of divide Harley into different sort of steps in her character into how she got where she is today. So start, I would say Batman the Animated, then the comic debut. She does change a little in character in that she becomes a little darker, a little more adult. the thing with Ivy giving her powers comes up as like she's almost a drug addict to Ivy's juice that she's using to give her superpowers. They don't keep that theme really, but like I said, they're doing things to try and make her more adult. There's a really awful comic where she shoots like some little people that are working for the Joker. They're sort of just shooting things out to try and like make her a little more adult and less Batman the Animated, but Batman the Animated was plenty fine adult, honestly. Like, was it a little like low key and you kind of had to figure it out on your own? Yeah, but like, yeah, you doesn't really need to go there. Pull up some more Harley stories. So this Emperor Joker. This is Joker Mask. This is Joker's Last Laugh. So all of these stories, I could say, are the same story over and over again. Basically, the Joker is given godlike powers, and then Harley's given the short end of the stick. Like, it's the same thing over and over. The Joker ends up creating these like Jokerettes, and look at poor Harley here. What the heck, right? Reign of Emperor Joker. Mixel Spitlet gives him unlimited powers, like the mask. And let me see if I can quickly flip to how this kind of goes for Harley. TikTok. Oh no, just a bit. I can't find it. Isn't that the way it goes? Here we are. What does Joker do? He like makes her go poof and imagines her into the stars. So she dies in this. Like, he also like imagined up this Queen version. It's the same thing again. Like, come on, you guys. Like, he's imagining some version of himself that. But I do bring these up because it shows more of like their rocky relationship. Like, everything's not all fine and dandy in the comics. With like I feel like in the Batman the Animated, they have little fights. They get back together. Like it's comical, it's cartoony, it's like Bugs Bunny, like they're trying to blow each other up and stuff. But then you're like, but that would actually have consequences. But in the comics, it's a little more like they can have a little more of an adult theme to it. Like, trying to see if this is the right one. It is a right one. But this is the more right one. So in the third Joker's Last Laugh, we get a different kind of thing going on with Joker and Harley. So the Joker decides that what he needs is an heir. And I'm trying to find the phone conversation where Harley has... Oh, I don't want to leave like bookmarks in my comics, you know? Here we go. So if you look, she's on the phone with him and she's asking the superheroes for help. Let me see. My Puddin's back in town and he won't take no for an answer, she says. He wants to have a baby. And she's like, yeah. If you wanted to keep it, oh boy, I'm messing that one up. If you want, then should put a ring on it. So anyway, she helps the superheroes come up with a formula to this Joker serum that's affecting all the many super bad guys that were locked up in the super bad prison. So she helps the other side in that one. This is kind of bringing us up to the next part. Let me look at this timeline. So we're at Emperor Joker there.